The following video contains quite a few flashing effects because of terrible old game animations. People who are photosensitive should take caution. I'll try and dull them down as best I can so that you can enjoy the video, but I just want you to be warned, okay? Now I've done the warning, I hope you enjoy the video. Red 2 standing by, all for lit and in the green. Welcome to a somewhat unusual project. Not a typical one for this channel. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Red version lately, helping out with a Pokédex project, lending my brother a hand on Silver version on the 3DS, and my mind wandered into all sorts of odd areas and considerations. As we all know, Red and Blue versions are a bit spotty when it comes to their engine room. On the surface, the games do play pretty well and there are some solid ideas, certainly enough to generate a pop culture phenomenon and multimedia juggernaut. Under the surface though, the programming shortcuts and clever tricks used to actually make everything work and fit on the cartridge also wound up being responsible for a range of weird and wonderful glitches. There are also legitimate programming mistakes like focus energy dividing the critical rate of your Pokemon by 4 instead of multiplying it by same, but only if you're faster than your opponent, otherwise you can't land a critical hit at all, and some boneheaded decisions like the special stat, which made Pokemon such as Alakazam utterly game-breaking, or some really shoddy move pool choices. Like, take Rhyhorn and Rhydon as one such example. Despite being rock-ground types, they do not learn any moves of those types on leveling up during Red and Blue. Their strongest naturally learned move, discounting Horn Drill, which probably won't hit since one-hit KO moves couldn't affect a faster Pokemon in Generation 1 and these two are as slow as a wet week, was Takedown, which as anybody who has ever trained a Beldum knows, Takedown sucks. So it also didn't help that only 5 ground moves, 2 of which were unique to Cubone and Marowak, and 2 rock moves existed in Generation 1. Rock Throw was only learned by the Geodude line and Onix, and had its usual 50 power but for some reason 65 accuracy, only the developers and Arceus know why, and Rock Slide, which at least had 75 base power and 90 accuracy, but it was exclusive to TM48. Quite a few types were hamstrung by poor move selection, as it happens. Ghost only had 1 move that could do super effective damage, and 3 of the 8 fighting moves were unique to Hitmonlee, with the strongest widely available fighting move being Submission, thanks to a TM, but it absolutely sucked. Only 80 power, 80 accuracy, and 25% recoil damage. Pretty terrible in all fairness, and it was part of why Bug was so terrible because most of their moves just sucked. Further move pool quirks come into play in very unusual fashion. Pokemon belonging to run-of-the-mill trainers, and some major trainers as well, always used their 4 most recently learned moves at the equivalent level, or whatever they had if the Pokemon had less than 4 moves at the time. This does seem to persist to a degree in later generations, even as key battles actually improve the trainer AI and movesets. For example, in Red and Blue, let's look at the Super Nerd who battles us for the fossils in Mount Moon. His Pokemon are Grimer, Voltorb, and Koffing, all at level 12. Grimer and Koffing are first encountered at the Pokemon Mansion on Cinnabar Island, a long way in the game from here, while Voltorb is first found on Route 10 in the Long Grass. The lowest wild encounter level for Koffing and Grimer is 30, and their learned moves are balanced around this. Therefore, any trained Koffing under level 32, when it learns Sludge, will only have Tackle and Smog in its moveset, while any Grimer under level 30, when it learns Poison Gas, will only have Pound and Disable. Now, at least Koffing's got a bit of an advantage because Smog has a 50-50 chance of poisoning in this game, but it's still pretty terrible. Worth noting, Voltorb actually gets Sonic Boom at level 17. Pokemon which evolve by evolution stones, barring the evolutions, are also hamstrung by this. Take Giovanni's Nidoqueen at Silphco. It's level 41 and naturally learns Body Slam, the one and only move Nidoqueen actually learns, at level 23. It also has a starting moveset of Tackle, Scratch, Tail Whip and Body Slam, the moves every theoretical Wild Nidoqueen would have at level 1. It would attempt to learn Scratch again at level 8, as Nidoran Female and Nidorina would, and then learn Poison Sting at level 14, which pushes Tackle out. On reaching level 23, it attempts to learn Body Slam, which it already has, and thus can't learn it again. Nidoqueen learns no more moves naturally, thus it is left with this moveset when we fight Giovanni. It even retains these 4 moves when we battle Giovanni in the Viridian Gym. Nidoking is in a similar boat, as only Giovanni's Rhydon was taught Fissure. And like I said, one-hit KO move, not hitting Rhydon is slow. Even Blue's Executor, should he have that in the final battle, falls prey to this, having only Hypnosis, Barrage and Stomp. Do take note that this works in the favour of some evolved Pokemon. For example, Weezing will have Sludge available to it, as it's considered part of its starting moveset. And by the same token, Gyarados also has Hydro Pump accessible. In fact, every move it can learn but for Hyper Beam will be accessible on your rival's Gyarados should he have it. This was just a programming quirk, the game didn't cheat. And my own calculations with the RNG and Supersonic rigorously tested over 1,000 uses by both my Pokemon and the AI, so 2,000 in total compared across 2 datasets, to determine hit rate, occurrence of self-inflicted damage, and the likelihood of the various confusion durations and how many times a Pokemon hurts itself during each duration, plus more, can also provide sufficient evidence to confidently say the AI doesn't fudge the RNG either. Although my recordings are actually making me question that. So where am I going with all this apart from crazier? Well, the terrible movesets of Generation 1 were what got me thinking. There are lots and lots of ways for us to make life difficult for ourselves or soft lock our game, sometimes even hard locking it. There is the story about the endless battle produced by mistakenly using a Pokemon weak to Psychic and which knows Rage against Lorelei's Dugong, which endlessly spams Rest, thanks to the good AI flag being coded to use moves of a super effective type without checking whether said move actually damages the target, and Generation 1's AI having infinite PP. But could I put the AI into a few impossible battles? How many trainer-owned Pokemon could not actually hurt a Gastly? How well would a solo challenge with a Gastly go? So, we'll run down all the little base stats of Gastly, our reliable companion, here. So, Gastly's base stats: base HP of 30, base attack of 35, base defense of 30, base special of 100, which covers its special attack and special defense, and a base speed of 80. So not really too bad. Gastly is super effective against Ghost and Psychic, Grass, and later on Fairy, but not a huge amount. It is weak to Ghost, Psychic, and later on Dark, but just Ghost and Psychic and Ground in these games on account of the fact it doesn't have Levitate. It's immune to Normal and Fighting, and it has 2 double resistances to Poison and Bug, and it also resists Grass. So, not too bad. It's a pretty decent Pokemon, but it's best known for its special attacking capabilities, and pretty much everything Gengar can do. Its moveset in Generation 1 is pretty terrible. We start out with Lick, Confuse Ray and Nightshade. Lick only has a crummy 20 power. Nightshade does typeless damage equal to the target's level, so it will affect normal type Pokemon, and then it learns Hypnosis and Dream Eater, and the accuracy of Hypnosis is awful. Its TM list isn't great. It gets TM06 Toxic, TM20 Rage, TM21 Mega Drain, TM24 Thunderbolt, TM25 Thunder, TM29 Psychic, TM31 Mimic, TM32 Double Team, TM34 Bide, TM36 Self-Destruct, TM42 Dream Eater, TM44 Rest, TM46 Psywave, TM47 Explosion, and TM50 Substitute. So there's really not a lot that Gastly can do. In terms of move pool variety, it's still a pretty decent Pokemon. You're just going to have to rely on a few TMs to get Gastly really rolling. But Because of that high special stat and immunity to 2 types, Ghastly is still pretty handy. So, now that we've been introduced to our starter, I want to answer some questions. One of the most important is, if you're going for an optimal run, which starter should Ghastly replace? Now, I realise this isn't the best look, replacing one of these beloved Pokemon with a ghost, but relax, I don't do animal cruelty. Cruelty to stupid customers, on the other hand, I would absolutely advocate for, but cruelty to animals? No. I will be very serious about this, and I can promise you that no starter Pokemon are harmed in this experiment. None of them have been taken out the back and hit with a brick or shot like a Yellow or anything like that. Also, I don't care how wrong the Pokemon company says I am, the term is starter Pokemon. It will always be starter Pokemon, and I will die on that hill. So, which starter do we replace? The answer will ultimately be achieved with the help of our rival, a respected individual with a Pokemon training pedigree and a noble name. Look, sometimes I'm allowed to act like I'm 10, okay? Do you have any idea how much effort it takes being mature and thinking up names that are respectful and don't slag off people I know? Anyway, but its assistance also requires maths. Lots and lots of maths. I am only using experience gained from trainer battles in this challenge, and there are slight fluctuations based on our rival's team. Depending on what we choose, the grass-water-fire combination of Bud's team shifts, and that plays a factor. I spent a lot of time calculating the total experience from every single trainer in the game, and worked in the variations from the 3 different team options. The route which gives us the most experience occurs if we replace... Mario Kart item box sound effect, please! Bulbasaur. But there's a bit of a twist behind it. This calculation also answers a second question: which level will Ghastly reach? Conveniently, Ghastly shares the same experience group, medium slow, as the starters. This group has a fairly odd formula involved, which is coming up on screen, and features a weird permutation which causes Pokemon to require lots more experience to go from level 2 to 3 than 3 to 4. They will generally level quickly early on, and we know a level 5 Pokemon in this experience group will start with 135 experience in total, as that is what it needs to reach this level. So, for the record, we have 3 other experience groups in Generation 1, all of which actually behave pretty sensibly. There is Medium Fast, or Cubic unofficially, which requires 1 million experience to reach level 100. The total experience required to reach a certain level equals the level cubed, in other words. Fast requires 800,000 experience to reach level 100, so basically 0.8 times the requirements of Medium Fast, and Slow, which requires 1.25 million experience to reach level 100, and basically 1.25 times Medium Fast. We do not need to worry about Erratic, which starts out having super high experience requirements early, but much faster level ups as you get closer to 100, and Fluctuating, which is the opposite, because these debuted in Generation 3. If you're curious, Erratic requires just 600,000 experience to reach level 100, and the formula is on screen. Fluctuating requires an insane 1.64 million experience to reach level 100. So if you want to get a balloon to level 100, you would need to put in nearly 1/3 more, 31.2% for the pedantic, experience than you would for the physical embodiment of space, as an example. The extra 390,000 experience would get a Pokemon in the slow experience group to level 67, medium slow to level 72, medium fast to level 73, fast to level 78, and erratic to level 80. And another Pokemon in the fluctuating group would get to level 66. You're welcome. So, with the amount of experience acquired solely from trainer battles, before we enter the Elite Four, Ghastly will reach level 78. And you know what? It actually doesn't matter which starter we replace. Let's break it down with maths. Lots and lots of maths. Then there's more maths. Basically, I crunched the numbers first by using a website with an experience calculator, and the link is in the description. Then I found out this had given me some wrong data, such as lower experience than actually provided for Machop and Geodude, and was full of rounding errors. So I went looking again and happened to find a video on YouTube on KangaskDan's channel. The credit for actually explaining all this is due to this particular channel. There's quite a lot of Pokemon maths on there, so go check that out. The link is in the description and you might learn a heck of a lot more. So, that provided me with the formula for calculating experience. It's slightly different in Generation 1 and 2 compared to 3 and 4, and Bulbapedia actually makes a slight error in listing the Generation 3-4 formula as the formula for the first 4 generations. More boring maths! The formula is up on screen. So B equals the base experience value of the Pokemon, which is another hidden stat. S equals the number of participants for sharing experience. There are slightly odd calculations for sharing experience in Generation 1, but we don't need to worry about that. L is the level of the Pokemon. E is for the Lucky Egg multiplier, which we don't need to worry about. A is for the Trainer multiplier, like you're battling a trainer's Pokemon. And T is for the Traded Pokemon multiplier. These last three can either be 1 or 1.5 depending on circumstance. So a battle against a trained level 25 Alakazam with a Pokemon I caught would give us the following, basically. Please note that the remainder is always removed. Do not use any remainders, whole numbers only. So if you end up with an experience value ending in 0.5, you round that down to the whole number. So, I used that formula to calculate, again, the total amount of trainer experience provided for each starter replacement. Choosing Bulbasaur to replace does give you the most trainer experience, but only by 149 experience points over choosing Squirtle. Across all the battles in the game, including the Elite Four, if we replace Bulbasaur, we get 559,315 total experience. If we replace Squirtle, we get 559,166 experience. If we choose Charmander, we actually get a bit less, 555,942 experience. Why is this? Well, the answer lies in mods, team setup. There are effectively 3 constant slots in Bud's party. These are taken up by Pidgeot, Alakazam, and ultimately Rhydon after Raticate gets the boot. No, I do not believe Bud's Raticate dies. He's in Pokemon Tower to find Cubone and Marowak and says as much. He probably never went up to the top floor and saw the Rocket grunts. It's every bit as plausible to think he's in cahoots with the Rockets because there is literally no reason for him to stick around in Silph Co just to face you when you're en route to Giovanni. This is what we get for naming him Bud, I guess. He sold out to the Rockets from pure malice towards me and his forgetful grandpa. Anyway, the rotating spots in Bud Party depend on which starter you pick. His fire choice is the Growlithe line or the Charmander line, grass is the Bulbasaur line or the Execute line, and the water choice is either the Squirtle line or Gyarados, since he never uses Magikarp. And herein lies the crucial element. Bud does not evolve Execute or Growlithe until the final battle at the Pokemon League, whereas Gyarados comes in firing on all cylinders and giving great experience from the outset. While the Squirtle line provides the most base experience of the 3 starters, the fact Bud cannot have Gyarados on his team means those who start with Charmander have slightly less total trainer battle experience to draw on. It's perhaps inconsequential in the great scheme of things since the difference wasn't actually major. In the end, Charizard's run is 3,373 experience behind Venusaur's, and that's 1 or 2 Pokemon at the high end of the game. But the calculation was worth doing even if there is no actual level difference on the 3 routes. If we want, there are 12 rare candies we can acquire during the game And of course, it is more mathematically efficient to use all of those after we battle every trainer but before the Elite Four. The end result would be the same though, there would be no variation in level. Ghastly would end up at level 90 prior to entering the Elite Four on all routes with 762,160 experience. Funnily enough, the experience gained from the Elite Four is nearly all the same. Charizard does get the most experience, 56,241, but Venusaur's is 56,239 and Blastoise, is 56,237. So if we did a rare candy binge, we'd end up at level 92 on all routes. The third question is, how many Pokemon can we defeat undamaged, and how many trainers can we defeat undamaged? Due to the odd choices in this game, sometimes a Pokemon will be unable to hurt us depending on its level, because it doesn't know moves which aren't normal or fighting type moves. Let's take Pikachu, the mascot. A level 25 Pikachu will have its first 4 moves available: Thundershock, Growl, Thunder Wave, and Quick Attack in that specific order. The moment Pikachu reaches level 26, however, Swift will push Thundershock out of its move pool, and it cannot hurt Ghastly until we encounter a level 43 Pikachu. By this point, Growl and Thunder Wave will have been pushed out for Agility and Thunder, respectively. Basically, Pokemon wind up learning moves in the same way they do in the daycare. Things can interestingly change sometimes when a Pokemon evolves too. Golbat actually gets Screech as a base move, but Zubat doesn't. So a Golbat ranging from level 21 to 31 can't hurt Ghastly due to Leech Life being pushed out by Confuse Ray and Bite being a normal move in these games. Do take note that one fighting attack can hurt us. Seismic Toss does typeless damage, so it can affect us, and in the same way Nightshade can hurt normal types, as I said. Some species of Pokemon, however, never learn any non-normal or fighting damaging moves, and cannot naturally learn Seismic Toss or Sonic Boom. The list is as follows: Caterpie, Metapod and Kakuna, for obvious reasons, they only have Harden, Rattata and Raticate, Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff, Meowth and Persian, Abra, which can only teleport, Exeggutor, Hitmonlee, Lickitung, which couldn't learn Lick, mind you, Rhyhorn and Rhydon, Chansey, Kangaskhan, Scyther, Tauros, Magikarp, Eevee, and Snorlax. Technically, Mankey, Primeape, and Machoke cannot hurt us either, because while they do naturally learn Seismic Toss, none are actually fought at a level which would allow them to learn it. Farfetch'd also cannot hurt us, as its only non-normal damaging move, Peck, is removed from its moveset on learning Swords Dance at level 23, and the lowest level we fight one is at level 26. We only fight one Seal at level 30, and it only knows Headbutt and Growl then. No Grimer we fight can hurt us due to them all being below level 37 when they learn Sludge, and the only Muck above that level is Koga's Muck. Team Rocket sucks at Pokemon training. This means there are 22 definite Pokemon which cannot hurt us, and 6 which cannot hurt us by an accident of the moveset arrangement. Technically, Lance's Dragonite should be able to hurt us, but it's replaced, I think, the only move that could, I think it might have been Dragon Rage in its moveset at the time, with Barrier. So it's got Agility and Barrier and Slam and Hyper Beam, so Lance's Dragonite can't actually hurt us. I did originally think Voltorb and Electrode were on this list as well, but I had to rejig things because I forgot that Sonic Boom is a fixed damage move, and in Generation 1, it can hurt ghosts. So, as a bit of a fun fact, we never actually face Psyduck, Krabby, Scyther, Electabuzz, Magma, Pinsir, Ditto, Eevee or the Eeveelutions, Porygon, the 2 Mount Moon fossil lines, Snorlax and Dratini in trainer battles. Obviously we don't face the legendary Pokemon either. Clefable, Poliwrath and Golem do not appear in trainer battles, and they also have no wild encounters, so the only way you'll see their front sprite is to evolve them yourself. We won't actually see Venusaur if we pick Charmander as our starter, because no trainer besides Bud and ourselves, should we pick and evolve Bulbasaur, can have a Venusaur. I spent a lot of time analysing each trainer on the various paths, and determining their moves based on the level of the Pokemon. Each Pokemon which cannot hurt us was flagged with a 1 in my spreadsheet, and Pokemon which can had a 0. Note that this did include any Pokemon which can use Leech Seed, Mirror Move, and Metronome. I did count Leech Seed, but I didn't include Supersonic and Confuse Ray as damaging moves, as they're just annoying as hell and I felt like it. I need some standards, and technically the opponent doesn't hurt us. So, there are 843 trainer-owned Pokemon in the game across 340 different trainers. The total number of Pokemon in the game which cannot damage us at all is 306 out of 843, or 36.29% if we replace Bulbasaur, and 305 out of 843, or 36.18% if we replace Charmander or Squirtle. Why is this? Because Charmander doesn't learn Ember until level 9. When we battle our rival, Charmander is at level 8. It's just short, and as a result, Bulbasaur has a slightly easier time. In addition, 68 out of 340 trainers, exactly 20% if we replace Bulbasaur, 67 if we replace Charmander or Squirtle, so a hair under 20% at 19.7%, so let's say 20% of all trainers do not have even one Pokemon on their team, even if it's a team of 1, capable of damaging us. The reason for the variation? That first rival battle, because the Pidgey can't hurt us. Gust is a normal move in this generation. Yes, I took the time to work all that out. The final question I thought of is, what would our stat experience be? The stat experience system from Generation 1 and 2 is very weird. When you knock out a Pokemon, your Pokemon will receive experience to a given stat equal to the opponent's relevant base stat. For example, the ubiquitous Zubat has 40 HP, 45 base attack, 35 base defense, 40 base special, and 55 speed. So you get that much experience into a stat. Please note, things were changed I think a little bit in Generation 2 to accommodate Generation 1. Not 100% sure how it all clicks together. But the calculation method is weird. At level 100, the boost to stats from stat experience is equal to the formula I'm showing on screen. Basically, it does still add up to 63 extra points in a given stat, but you can max out all of them. The refined EV system was part of why the Game Boy Color titles, well, and regular Game Boy, were incompatible with the Game Boy Advance titles. In addition, individual values were determined by picking a random number from 0 to 15 and doubling it to get the base addition, except for HP, which was determined by adding values from the other stats if they were odd IV values. 8 was added to HP from an odd attack IV, 4 from defense, 2 from speed, and 1 from special. The new system of just generating a number between 0 and 31 to get your IVs makes so much more sense even if it's not explained in game. Okay, so back to stat experience. The maximum stat experience we can have in each stat is 65535. And if we replace Bulbasaur, our good friend Ghastly will get the following: 43,992 HP, 53,010 attack, 51,724 defense, 49,639 special, 52,552 speed, and that gives us at level 100 52 extra HP, 57 extra attack, 56 defense, we don't round remember, 55 special, and 57 speed. If we replace Charmander, we receive 43,887 HP, 52,813 attack, 51,799 defense, 49,469 special, and 52,327 speed, translating to 52 HP again, 57 attack, 56 defense, 55 special, and 57 speed. If we replace Squirtle, we will receive 44,000 experience in HP, 53,096 attack, 51,657 defense, 49,684 special, and 52,492 speed for, wait for it, 52 HP, 57 attack, 56 defense, 55 special, and 57 speed. So you might have noticed something. Yeah, nothing I've done has actually mattered. It actually makes no difference in the great scheme of things how you approach this or which starter you replace. The end results are still so close as to make no appreciable difference. I spent hours writing things down. I spent hours doing research and slaving away over dull, tedious, repetitive maths, only to find out every single question I had meant absolutely nothing because the variables ultimately have such meaningless differences. Even the number of Pokemon and trainers who can't hurt Ghastly barely change. It's not like my Supersonic project where I could prove the AI doesn't fudge the numbers against the player. You can take whichever starter you like out the back and hit it with a brick so you can take its ghost on a solo journey. Professor Oak won't care. He thinks his grandson really is named Bud, and he trusts 10-year-olds to fill in his Pokedex for him. Sure, let's give it to kids who totally won't put something stupid in there, kids who are totally responsible and totally mature and will not tell a senile old man that his grandson is named Bud, or Douche or Dix or whatever. None of it mattered. Now that the numbers have been crunched, I've vented, and it's time to put everything into practice. We gather our experience, we get the best moves, and we claim that championship. We start off our adventure with a battle against Bud using Ghastly, which, as I've mentioned, has Lick, Confusion, and Nightshade. We will not learn anything until level 27 when it gets Hypnosis. So I just rolled a die as to which starter we'd replace. 1 and 2 for Bulbasaur, 3 and 4 for Charmander, 5 and 6 for Squirtle. Yep, you saw that shaky cam footage recorded from my phone correctly. The one with technically the worst result for experience wound up being my choice, but it still doesn't really matter anyway. We wind up at the exact same place. So let's get started. So yeah, let's be honest, this was actually pretty easy because Squirtle really couldn't hurt us. Can't do any damage, and we win that fight very, very easily. It just takes a little while. Then we wind up getting Professor Oak's parcel, we get the Pokedex, which we can't really do anything with, and then we wind up running into one of the worst things you can ever encounter in a solo run as a result of the second battle, and that is sand. Seriously, while I do say the game doesn't fudge the numbers on the RNG, I'm sorely tempted to question that when it comes to accuracy. There's no variation like there is from Generation 2 onwards. It works like any regular stat drop, and I missed 5 attacks in a row from one sand attack, which was really, really annoying and actually didn't help me a lot throughout the rest of the battle, especially since I got hit by another sand attack. Worth noting though, the AI can actually wind up missing some of its status moves because some things are rigged in your favour. Not paralysis though, Squirtle wasn't affected by that at all, and this got tricky, but we won. We defeated Bud once again. And we moved on to the next battle in Viridian Forest. So we can grab a few items, look around, and wind up battling Weedle. And one Caterpie. There's only one member of the Caterpie line in the entire lot. Around this time I realised my calculations were a touch off, and I went to look at something on my spreadsheet, and then the emulator crashed. But we were back at it again shortly after. I made my way up there, and we were able to face Brock and get another fairly mimetic line from the original game, face off against a shirtless guy with rock Pokemon, and worth noting, Geodude can't hurt us, Onix can because Bide is set damage and therefore typeless, but it didn't get the chance. We won pretty easily and received the Boulder Badge. So we get on to the next route, Route 3, where I actually had some pretty good luck using Lick. Didn't really help that much, but still nice. we have the other mimetic line. There is, I believe, a youngster in each game who references shorts in some way, a mildly horrifying Jigglypuff sprite, and of course, we do not get to wake up early from Sing and things like that. Please note that for later. It really is horrifying, that sprite. And then we go into Zubat country, Mount Moon, where there's a bug catcher for some reason, and we wind up facing Team Rocket. Team Rocket was pretty easy to deal with, but even they wind up having Zubats to trouble us. Mount Moon really is Zubat country. Team Rocket has a lot of them too. So more Zubats and a Paris, which is why the bug catchers are there. And we face this guy. This Rocket is a pain in the backside in Nuzlocke because his Raticate has Hyper Fang and it hurts. It really hurts at this level. So you need a very good defender, but it can't touch Ghastly, which is really nice. Bit of smug satisfaction winning that one so easily. And then we fought the guy who winds up giving us the fossils. For the record, I wound up taking the Dome fossil, and then once this guy was out of the way, we were able to make it to Cerulean City. You can't go back to Pewter that way, which sucks. And once we got there, we wound up battling for the third time. We don't quite have the advantage here, because while I was able to do a decent amount of damage to him, we still have to deal with our worst enemy, Sand. But I thought I was going to get away with it. Nope, Pidgeotto got out of confusion, hit me with Sand, and the tedium began. It's worth noting, Psychic types, weren't affected by Ghost moves for whatever reason, but because Nightshade was typeless, it got past it. So we really were a bit stuck with crappy accuracy, but we beat up a rat. He hasn't evolved his starter and I was running out of PP, but we won that. Then it was time to go up Nugget Bridge and I realised something. Rap keeps going. Even if it's doing no damage, it keeps going and just wastes a lot of time, which was incredibly annoying. Also annoying was any time I leveled up, I had to mash the B button. I wish we had an Everstone in this game because that got a little bothersome. So we beat the Rocket at the end of it, more crap from Rap, and then I had a bit of a realisation. I needed to catch some Pokemon for HMs. I found an Oddish for Cut pretty easily, but unfortunately it took quite some time to find a Pidgey of all things. That was my Pokemon for Fly. So that was set, we battled a few more opponents. Slowpoke could have been trouble, but I don't think its special is that great. Still, Psychic types are a bit of a nightmare for us. We have to be careful later on in the game. Then, after that particular battle, we learned Hypnosis, which immediately didn't work. Then it worked, and Geodude woke up instantly, which is a thing that can happen for whatever reason. It's really annoying. It's incredibly annoying, but I suppose it's compensation for not being able to act the turn you wake up. Anyway, we rescued Bill, we got the SS ticket. We did the cops' work for them and wound up beating up this Team Rocket grunt who gives us the TM for Dig, which had 100 base power in Generation 1. It was seriously good. For a 2-turn move anyway. Earthquake is still strictly better. We can't give the TM back, but we can go into Misty's gym and battle plenty of water Pokemon which we will face a lot of later on in the game. Then this Goldeen can be trouble because Supersonic is a thing. Then I fought Misty. Staryu went down thanks to Confusion and Nightshade, and against Starmie, Hypnosis actually worked and it stayed asleep. So I won that battle pretty easily. Then it was off to Route 6 and the path to Vermilion City. I think this is the last bug catcher we face in the game, the last two anyway. We faced a Squirtle, which was better than our rivals, and paralysed it. And that Butterfree can be a pain in the butt because it has the 3 powder moves. There was more sand, there was another rat. We made it to Vermilion City, headed off to the Pokemon Fan Club and got the bike voucher from a guy who's disturbingly close to his Rapidash. And we need the bike. There was more rap crap, and we faced Gamblers who were renamed to Gamers in Generation 3, but no, they are Gamblers. Also, please note, I do not wake up early from sleep. It might take a couple of turns, but I do not wake up immediately. And if the opponent is slower than you, you can wake up and get put back to sleep. Fighting that Magnemite, by the way, was how I remembered Sonic Boom did typeless damage. But anyway, we made it to the SS Anne, where we will find Cut. And yes, we can battle various trainers along the way. It's fairly methodical to sweep the ship, and by this point, Ghastly was actually chugging along well. I didn't need Hypnosis, it was basically a Nightshade and a Lick, and we've got most fights done. It was starting to get a little tedious. Some tougher ones like Shelder, which have good defense, can withstand a Lick, and that guy should be put on a list. So should that guy, he's threatening to make us walk the plank. But we do get called out for our rudeness, which is fair enough. We are just barging into people's cabins. And then I learned Dream Eater. So I got rid of Confuse Ray because Dream Eater is probably going to be a bit more useful. In theory. It does good damage and it allows me to heal, but would you believe it is really troublesome to get it to hit? Anyway, most of the battles here were really boring, but the battle with Bud was actually a bit different because this time he did not use sand, which made the rest of the fight so much easier. See, Pidgeotto went down really quickly, his rat went down, and then Kadabra was kind of a pain. It did a fair bit of damage, but that was from a critical hit. And Wartortle was beaten pretty easily. Our health just shoots back up. We can find a Great Ball in the trash, and we also got Cart from a Seasick Old Man. Oh boy. The Vermilion Gym, we all hate those doors, don't we? Sometimes the second one doesn't actually load in. There is, of course, a glitch which you will not be surprised about. We did at least wind up having to go through a lot of it, so you can see exactly how bad it is. But we finally made it. Finally made it through to Lieutenant Surge with his bluff and bluster and talk about the war. And unfortunately for him, he was not going to last very long in this particular battle. Voltorb went down easily. Pikachu was a bit of a pain because it paralysed us. And then Surge wasted his turn using an X speed, but we took out Pikachu. See, the weird thing is the AI can choose its moves after you choose yours. It chooses its moves when their turn comes around. It's kind of odd, but they'll pick random actions, and it will be when their Pokemon is actually acting. Ghastly was ready to learn Thunderbolt, which is a very useful move. Good power, good accuracy. I got rid of Lick, and this was kind of a problem because it left me with Dream Eater as my other damaging move. Well, there was Nightshade. Thunderbolt is still a great electric attack, but of course, there's still problems using Hypnosis. And this is why the Bellsprout line can suck. It just holds you up with status effects and Wrap. Fortunately, despite a few issues, I was able to wind up getting a decent amount of progress until I remembered that I needed Flash. And then I remembered I needed 10 caught Pokemon to actually get Flash. So I had to run around and catch a whole bunch of Pokemon. And then I accidentally knocked out a Diglett, so I had to try again. Then I accidentally used Thunderbolt on a Diglett. I didn't die. Then I wound up catching Diglett, which was very fortunate. Hypnosis was actually pretty handy, but you can catch Pokemon that are digging, and then I accidentally knocked out an Ekans. So we had to do it all a third time, catch all those Pokemon, and finally we could get Flash. And Oddish couldn't learn Flash, but thankfully Drowsy could. Then it was back to Route 9 and Route 10, and we could proceed. Rock Throw actually hit, which was a surprise, and then we get into Rock Tunnel, which I haven't memorized. Cubone was a pain in the butt because Bone Club is of course super effective. Slowpoke was no longer a problem because we could just drop a Thunderbolt on it, and that was it, and I also had healing in the form of Nightshade. not Nightshade, Dream Eater. Geodude woke up, then we missed, then Rock Throw hits, and we were able to at least get some decent recovery. Dream Eater is handy, but having to deal with Hypnosis sucked, because 4 times in a row, this Oddish woke up the turn I put it to sleep. Do you think anything like that happens to me? No. I don't get anything like that. Then Hypnosis missed. This was why I was starting to question exactly whether the RNG is rigged. But we got through there facing hikers and a bunch of junior trainers and made it to Lavender Town, Ghastly's home. And we face a rambling, gambling dude whose line was changed to rambling, gaming dude. We thunderbolted a Muck, thunderbolted a Nidoran, and used Dream Eater to heal 1 health for some reason. And yes, they do actually look a bit silly, but it's a bit fun. And the underground passage opened up. We wound up in Celadon City at long last, where you can find a PP up, which I did use. And then I needed a drink in order to get into Saffron City, but stupidly I didn't go and get Psychic just yet, because that would have been really handy. I did get Fly though, because that's always important. It allows me to move around and do the little things I need to do very easily. You need Cut to get Fly. It's very much an optional HM. And then it was time for the Rocket HQ. Ghastly is still just chugging along really nicely. We deal with rats. That guy down there can only be battled when you have the lift key. And we learn about the Sylph Scope and seeing ghosts. And this guy is just the most rocket grunt ever. All the regular Pokemon. We've got Zubats, we've got Coughing, we've got Grimer. There's probably a Rattata in there somewhere along the way. And then we spin. A lot. Because that takes a long time. It's fortunate I actually sped that up because, gee, that's boring. I don't know why they added that in there. It's just annoying. Anyway, we beat that guy and get the lift key. It's almost obvious the way he drops it. Battle this guy, which you can miss. And then we fought Giovanni for the first time. And his ace Pokemon can't actually hurt us. Onyx sucks. Rhyhorn was fairly easy to deal with because it can't hurt us. And KangaskDan is kind of stuck too. Just drop a Thunderbolt on it and you're done. We get the Sylph Scope. And that guy is a perv. I can see why they don't let men in because we are jerks quite a lot of the time, honestly. And then we have to deal with shenanigans with Hypnosis trying to take out these Pokemon. Why oh why didn't I go and get Psychic? For the most part, this was reasonably easy. There wasn't a lot our opponents could do. We were facing a decent variety of grass types and Leech Seed could be a bit of a bother. Execute was probably the biggest trouble, but Erica was easy enough to beat because I could basically just put stuff to sleep. Dream Eater's super effective against 2 of her Pokemon and Tangler can't take Nightshades and it can't actually hurt us at this point. Vileplume went down pretty easily as well, and we got the Rainbow Badge and Mega Drain, which became our healing move. It's better than the Dream Eater in the sense that it doesn't need to rely on a status move. Then we were back with our new moveset to Lavender Town and the Pokemon Tower where we faced Bud again. And he's improved his team. Pidgeotto was never going to trouble us with sand again. Growlithe and Execute were added to the team. Execute's a bit of a pain in the butt because I can't easily one-shot it. And of course it put us to sleep. But it can't hurt us because it only had Barrage. Kadabra went down easily and so did Wartortle. And then there was a bit of an issue because you can actually get past the Marowak with a Pokédoll. Under the rules I was not allowed to use it for experience. There were lots of channelers and they're all possessed by their Ghastly or Haunter. They're fairly easy battles, and there's interestingly a reference to white magic for some reason. I'm not sure if it's kept in Fire Red and Leaf Green, but we faced Marowak and the Pokédoll exploit allowed us to get past it. We would also use that same exploit to get past Snorlax. See? Easy. Then it winds up departing to the afterlife. And we fight Team Rocket again, and they are really not that difficult. They're pretty much stock standard Rocket grunts. We beat them like a rented mule and talk to Mr. Fuji. And we get the Poke Flute ready for the long run down. This route is tedious. There are lots of water-type Pokemon, but we've at least got a couple of moves that can hurt them, which is fairly handy. We'll start seeing a variety of them, and then we deal with Snorlax. So basically the same trick as Marowak. You just get your Pokédoll, and that solves it. It's worth noting, and yep, Snorlax goes back to the mountains, and we continue on our merry way, needing Cut to battle a guy who's got 2 Magikarp. But it does get worse in that sense later on. One of my favourite things about Pokemon, a level 28 Goldeen gives you 666 experience. Make your metal signs. But yeah, we do get a decent variety of water Pokemon from the fisherman. And then we head on into the maze on Route 13. Find a hidden item, deal with a Clefairy, which can't hurt us, and Pokemon like Poliwag. Plenty of Pidgeys, because this is where you run into bird keepers. You will wind up facing a lot of birds, and they're pretty much all the dang same. It's Pidgey, Pidgeotto, Spearow, and Fearow. You also face bikers whose Pokemon are generally coughing and wheezing Grimer and Muk. There's not a lot of difference. There's the occasional Doduo, but honestly, a lot of it is just the same. There's sometimes a Farfetch'd, but really, there's not a lot of variety. This was getting a bit boring. Don't skip the trainer up here. This is the only Clefairy that has Metronome and has a chance of damaging you. But there's a mini Erica to battle as well. And we can sort of brush past the other grunts and various adversaries as well. Wigglytuff looks disturbing. And we make it to Fuchsia City, where I had to go through the Safari Zone. Because of course we need to get the gold teeth, which you will see here. And we need to get Surf on top of that. But then I realized something. None of my Pokemon can learn Strength. So I headed into the Safari Zone trying to find Rhyhorn. And believe it or not, Rhyhorn didn't cooperate because Safari Balls suck. So this was really tedious. I tried making it angry and it just ran off. Then we encountered several more Pokemon, none of which were Rhyhorn, which was annoying me. And then I found a Scyther, which I wound up catching in one Safari Ball. Just how? How did that actually work? How did I get that lucky? And the one I was trying to catch was a pain in the backside. I got Rhyhorn, got the rare candy, and then headed on to Route 16 to face bikers. More bikers and cue balls, which have really large cod pieces and only use the Machop and Mankey lines. Seriously, this was actually getting really repetitive. I think that was the biggest issue with this. The fact that it got repetitive. There were some bird keepers to spice things up on Route 18, and then we enter Koga's gym, which fittingly for ninjas is all about deception. Psychic Pokemon! Psychic Pokemon! Psychic Pokemon! Would you believe more Psychic Pokemon? And then we actually wind up for the first time facing a Poison type, and then a Ground type. And after that interesting variety, we take on Koga, who is kind of a glorified biker in a sense. Coughing at least tried, but Psychic just ripped through him. I did try to bait his wheezing into using Self-Destruct, but it didn't work, which was sad. But we got the Soul Badge, and then it's on to more tedium for Silph Co, which could be a little bit difficult, so I'm gonna give you a bit of a rundown. You take the Warp here and wind up beating this Grunt, whichever order you like. Arbok falls to Psychic pretty easily. And then you will be able to walk along that narrow path, and you can pick up perhaps the most important item in Silph Co, the card key. 5th floor is where you find it. You can now go through Silph Co in a very methodical manner, and I recommend that. The first opponent you normally face is perhaps the gruntiest of the grunts. Zubat, Golbat, Raticate, the usual stereotypical Team Rocket stuff. Scientists have also betrayed Silphco for whatever reason to not pay their employees very well. They generally use electric-type Pokemon and poison-type Pokemon. You wind up facing Cubone along the way. We can get a TM4 self-destruct, don't make your Gastly explode. But if you want to heal, go up to the 9th floor, face this trainer down here who is a member of the 4 Rocket Brothers, which is a plot thread that goes nowhere. It's just there for a bit of flavor text, and you can heal your Pokemon there. If you go through the door above it, you can face that grunt and go and get ready to face Bud. Also, fun game. Try and tempt your opponent into using self-destruct. It's fun. Sometimes it works. But confusion was probably the most annoying issue I faced. There are some nice item treasure troves in Silphco, which you can sell. You can watch another Electrode explode. And basically, learn a bit more about Pokemon on top of that too. There's a random juggler in here for some reason. Don't know why. But you can also see that Bud is waiting for us for some reason. You can't reach the boardroom on the 11th floor. You have to go through Bud and his team. I swear he's in league with Team Rocket. Pidgeot, easy to dismiss. Just another Thunderbolt. Easy enough. Growlithe, easy enough for me to deal with. Execute is still a pain in the butt. I really wish I'd been able to start with Squirtle, because then I could blast through his Pokemon. Alakazam went down to a Thunderbolt and a critical hit, I think. And Blastoise is weak to Electric. And then we face Giovanni again, who has a Nidorino, which we take out easily. Nidoqueen went down. His Pokemon really aren't that strong against our current moveset. We got the Master Ball, and then the poor fighting Dojo. Psychic and Thunderbolt into oblivion, beaten again. Then we go to the Saffron City Gym. Psychics have lab coats for some reason, and we can just electrocute or Nightshade our way through pretty much everything. Kadabra did use Recover, but that wasn't a big pain. There are channelers who aren't possessed here as well, which is kind of interesting. I don't know what their hats are. Anyway, Sabrina, my favourite gym leader, and we wind up facing a Venomoth. Sabrina has a Venomoth in each game, Koga does not. Alakazam went down to a critical hit from Thunderbolt, and we get the Marsh Badge. Then it was off to actually face a couple of trainers we can only battle once we have Surf. She has Paras and Parasect, and this guy down here has Rhyhorn and Licky Tongue. So they're not much chop despite the fact you face them after you get Surf. Then we face Swimmers, an endless array of water-type Pokemon which we faced before on the SSN, and interestingly there's only one sprite for trainers on the water, but you'll find a few beauties along the way because female swimmers didn't exist in Generation 1 for some reason. It was really weird. Anyway, we blitz our way through all our opponents, and Cloyster is actually designed wrong because it's got the wrong orientation for its shell opening. Then we deal with this guy. The recurring trainer with 6 Magikarp. It is a complete waste of time. You get nothing out of it but some wasted PP. There's also a cue ball swimming as well, but honestly, as we traverse, anybody who decides to waste our time with 6 Magikarp should be shot and sent to the Russian front. Then we go into the Pokemon Mansion where we face some burglars. We wind up learning about Mew and Mewtwo. Another Electrode does not blow up. Light Screen only works on one Pokemon. And then we go into the gym. This one always trips me up because while Caterpie does evolve into Butterfree, in the end, it directly evolves into Metapod, so be careful. You can skip the trainers, but even if you answer the question correctly, you can face the array of Fire-type Pokemon. It's pretty much all Fire-type here. That question was worded very clunkily. Blaine has his iconic Burn Heal line. 2 of his Pokemon are unevolved, which is bad. Arcanine actually did a good job. Credit to Arcanine. It even burned us. But we wound up taking it down anyway. We get the Volcano Badge, and then it is time to battle the Viridian Gym at last. The only Tauros we fight in the game. There's a random Black Belt with a Machoke. We fight the first cool trainer, they were later renamed to Ace trainers, and yeah, we're just breezing our way through things. Nothing could really stand before us. Giovanni cites himself as the greatest trainer, but at this point his entire team was going down in one shot. I just breezed through it. Mega Drain or Psychic and he was gone. Ghastly just had him on the ropes. Even a Gen 1 miss didn't bother me. But then, after that, it was time for the rematch with Bud on Route 22, and things went slightly wrong because of Execute. I couldn't defeat it in one shot like I could everything else, which made things a little bit more interesting. It picked perhaps the worst possible move for me to deal with, Stun Spore. Because now I'm a lot slower. And Alakazam was dangerous. I had to try and knock it out quickly, but it wound up holding on against my Thunderbolt. I took another Psybeam because it was programmed to do super effective damage, and then Blastoise, which was a big threat, but it missed with Hydro Pump, perhaps as compensation for all the times my opponent wound up waking up first thing. All that aside, we get through the badge checks, some of which you need Surf for, then you need Strength for Victory Road, and that's really it. Push the rocks around onto the pressure plates and away you go. You face some fairly capable trainers, although some of them will wind up letting you down. There are some strong Pokemon along the way, but some idiots have first stage Pokemon. I also wound up facing the only Golduck in the game, and Chansey was a pain in the butt, because I thought I'm not going to be able to do too much damage to it. Nightshade got a Gen 1 miss, then it put me to sleep. Chansey can't hurt me. Not directly. Minimize is a pain, and I'm sitting there sleeping, not waking up early, while Chansey just gets smaller and smaller and lowers my attack, which I don't need, and I had to put up with that. So I couldn't hit it, then I wound up having to go to sleep again. This was such a pain because just some combinations are really awful. It gets smaller and smaller, I'm stuck sleeping, it tries to slap me, and let's just try using Psychic, see what happens. And I knocked it out. Fair play, Chansey. It was time to battle the Elite Four, and they weren't that much of a challenge. Pretty much everything Lorelei had got one shot by being part water. The only one that wasn't was Jinx, and that was still two shot. Thankfully we didn't get frozen, but she went down really easily. Even Lapras fainted. Bruno is a glorified hiker, and none of his Pokemon were any challenge. Why has he got two Onix? Mega Drain for them, Psychic for the fighting types, and their crap special ensures they go down. Agatha is a ghost specialist, but all her Pokemon are part poison. Thunderbolt for Golbat and Psychic for the rest took care of that. It was almost embarrassing in a way. So yeah, Arbok went down easily, Gengar goes down easily to Psychic as well. I was a bit surprised about that. Lance went down pretty easily as well, in all fairness. Thunderbolt for Gyarados and Aerodactyl, and Psychic for the Dragons because Dragonite is coded to use Agility. Not very smart. Then we would wind up battling, but again, really I just have to use this bit as a summary, because Project Ghastly and all the maths behind it have been very, very interesting. It's been kind of fascinating. It was neat putting everything into practice and getting the maths onto paper and proving my theories. But Ghastly still had a pretty easy run. Doing a solo run in this game isn't too much trouble if you just get some of the decent moves. Like, I was worried about Alakazam, but it went down to a critical hit from Thunderbolt. Most of the time I was blitzing past my opponents the more the game went on, and the better moves I got. Ghastly's solid special stat holds it in good stead, and shows exactly how broken that is. The only annoying part of the battle against Bud was Exeggutor. Arcanine can be a challenge, but even then, Arcanine was paralysed and fully paralysed. So with a bit of luck, a lot can go your way. it was nice that pretty much everything added up exactly as I said it would, with maybe a little bit not quite being perfect, but pretty much everything wound up going exactly how I wanted it to. Project Ghastly was a complete success, and while there were some battles that were a genuine pain in the backside, a lot of the time it was pretty easy. Using a ghost type in this game is phenomenal. You just have so much on your side, and the fact that Ghastly has those 3 halfway decent moves and Nightshade for a bit of cleanup makes it really, really good. It hit that mark exactly as I thought it would, and we just sort of went from there. It was a juggernaut. All I had to do in the Elite Four was use an elixir, because I technically wasn't supposed to heal during battles, though I kind of cheated a little bit in that annoying first battle, because it's only fair I should get to work around sand if the AI winds up fudging the numbers on me. And Ghastly evolves one more time. I probably could have let it evolve into a Haunter, but we got through. I'm surprised it worked so smoothly. Professor Oak will wind up congratulating us and chewing out butt, which is not a really well-phrased sentence, but that's why I gave him a stupid name, so that you can do things like that. All the maths and everything that came along with Project Ghastly, getting it all organised so we could see just what would happen, has been an experience. And in the end, a lot of it didn't matter, because we could just smash our way through. Maybe I could make it a bit more difficult on myself. Maybe I could force Ghastly to rely only on its natural learn set, which would have been a right royal pain. But what can you do? Except try again, and I'm not really prepared to try again. Ghastly makes it into the Hall of Fame along with our various HM users. The Oddish, the Pidgey. I admit I didn't quite get them in the right order. Drowsy was there for Flash, because Oddish can't learn it. I thought it could. Rhyhorn, which has a weird backspot for some reason. And Lapras. So there you go. It was a heck of a project. It took a lot of work. There was a fair bit of rushing, but I finally made it. Project Ghastly at long last is complete, and I don't think I'm doing any more videos like this again. It was fun doing the research, but I simply do not have the time to put all these things together. Nonetheless, it has been genuinely entertaining, giving you a bit of a snapshot, even if things really did get kind of boring and Ghastly was just one-shotting everything towards the end. It was an entertaining project. It was full of some pretty neat questions, and yeah, hopefully it gives you a little bit more insight into the Pokemon games as they started. We're back to Banjo-Kazooie after this, and I have a little bit of work to do. Thank you very much for joining me. Till next time, this is Red 2, returning to base.